All right, welcome everybody to episode 62 of the Nutanix Weekly podcast. I've got a bunch of the regular group here with me today. Mr. Ben Rogers, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I just got back from a good Thanksgiving break, had golf with my in-laws, and got to do a Table Rock mountain climb. So I'm feeling pretty good these days.
Nice. That sounds nothing like mine, which was just sitting down and eating and gaining weight. Jirah, how about you, Mr. Jirah Cox?
Hey, man, thanks for having us back. I will claim somewhere in the middle of the sitting down and the eating, punctuated by sleeping in and video games.
Okay. All right. That's sort of still on my side. I don't know how many calories you burn playing video games, but I guess I don't know. What were you playing?
I just said somewhere in the middle. I didn't say dead middle. Like, it's totally on your end of the spectrum.
Nice. Mr. Philip Sellers, how are you today, sir?
I'm good.
How did you spend Thanksgiving?
Well, we were on the road. We were in our nation's capital, so I got a chance to show the kids around some of the National Mall and museums. We didn't get out of the car, but we did a driving tour.
I was just about to give you credit for actually walking around and doing something, but
so it was a driving tour, but that was good for them, and we had great conversations about history and different people, and so I spent some time with the family.
Nice. All right. Well, that's cool. We'll have to see if we can get you back up there when you can actually get out.
That's right. Yeah, go inside of the art museums and all the other great things that we've got there in DC.
Yeah, that's right. You get out, walk around, and go eat.
We saw plenty of food trucks, so that's a staple there on the National Mall. So you can always get yourself a corn dog.
Nice. That is also true. All right. We are going today to attempt to focus ourselves a little better than last time. We're going to jump into, I guess, what we'll call part two, hopefully part two of two, but you never know with us. Part two of the conversation around Nutanix Cloud Clusters NC2 on Microsoft Azure. The last time that we jumped into this, we've got this very detailed and extensive blog post, and we probably got down, we say, Jirah, maybe a quarter of the way, or maybe a tenth.
Closer to a quarter. I'll give us a little credit for that.
All right. Perfect. Yeah, you got these big pictures in the middle that helped us make some progress.
Well, I remember Andy got wrapped around the statistics, the 91%, 64%, and 83%. And he was querying all of us if we thought those statistics were accurate. So today's probably more of the meat on the bone of why customers and companies want to move in this direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think I hear what you're saying, Harvey. Like, pictures in a blog post are sort of like the double spacing of a college essay. Like, that's really where the price per pound comes in.
That's right. So if anything, it looks like we made progress, right? We're a quarter of the way down, but the rest of it is probably a little more detailed, single spaced and all of that. So we'll jump in. I know right before we got on, actually, Mr. Ben Rogers, you had a question that I wouldn't allow you to ask until we got on the podcast. So I'm going to let you ask it now.
We're going to jump around. So we're going to go to bullet point 2, which is this on-demand elasticity. So I came from a Citrix world, Harvey, that, and I've made the move over to Nutanix, which is a lot of difference. Running Citrix, you're running in applications or in deploying applications versus running an infrastructure. So this idea of elasticity in the Citrix world, it's understood that elasticity could mean, auto scaling. The infrastructure is going to come as you need it. You don't have to hit some magic button. It grows as you grows and it collapses as you collapse. Mm-hmm. Auto scaling elasticity. In this cluster world, HCI world, cloud world, I understand that to be a little different, where you actually got to go, and let's say you're fixing to cap out on X nodes in a cluster, you hit the magic button. So that was the question I asked, is kind of explain, auto scaling and elasticity in this environment. This is not so much to Azure. This is more to clustered environments and cloud environments. And I'm curious about that coming from an environment where it'll automatically appear. I don't have to worry about that. If another 200 users come on, no big deal. Where in this case, I don't think that is quite the configuration there.
Well, let's talk about that, because it might be. This might surprise you.
Harvey, I think you were right. I mean, Ben thought he had a question, and you were right. That was content.
Yes. Yes, it was.
No, so it's all about how you define the terms, right? So the exact text is on-demand elasticity, right? So the question becomes, whose demand, right? You as the human operator, or the clusters, right? The logical entity that you're telling to run your workloads. And the answer really can be, it can be either, right? You can say, I need more capacity, right? Something's going to get deployed tomorrow. I need more space. It's some new hires. I need some more desktops, whatever. You can know what the catalyst is. Or of course you can automate it, right? So actually there's another blog post, and I'm sure we also podcasted about it, but you can automate that, right? Because you can run that in like through XPlay in Prism to say, hey, we're hitting 70%, we're hitting 80%. Push the button, call the API, run the script, basically hit the button that you would hit in the cloud portal console to say, give me a fourth node, give me a fifth node, give me a sixth node. And of course you could automate that the other direction too, right? Demand is down, it's nighttime, whatever. Eject that node, give it back, don't pay for it.
Do the thing, score the points, win the game.
Well, and today's the perfect day, being Cyber Monday, to talk about elasticity, right? I mean, all the retailers of the world, they're right in the thick of it today, doing this exact exercise, trying to keep their .com alive to take orders.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a hopefully profitable DDoS attack.
Right, and not run into things like what happens when you try to sell Taylor Swift concert tickets. Yeah. My family was on the receiving end of two very lucky tickets, but apparently, according to my daughter, you had a better chance of getting into Harvard than getting Taylor Swift tickets. So nice. Tell her you did number one. It's her turn to do number two.
That's right. Go to Harvard on scholarship.
That's right. On scholarship.
Or just sell two tickets.
Or just sell two tickets.
Pay for Harvard.
Yep. That would work.
But this is an interesting concept when you talk to customers, because customers that are coming from a 3-tier architecture and you talk about web design, I don't think a lot of times they really understand this concept of elasticity and trying to make it so easy to, you have an infrastructure, that infrastructure can age. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to age. You can keep adding new components to it and keep that infrastructure alive. I came from 3-tier, and Harvey, as many times as we had a VMware upgrade, it would be keep the old VMware up and running. Let's hope we have enough space to create a new VMware and basically migrate from one to the other. In this environment, you don't have to do that. You can literally just add nodes and that environment stays the same. So as hardware ages out, you eject those nodes. As hardware gets better and better, you inject those nodes. So it's just real interesting to talk to customers about the difference between your traditional 3-tier and your HCI, hyper-converged environment like we're talking about here. And we're seeing evidence of with it being Cyber Monday. I completely forgot that, but I'm sure my wife will remind me in about 30 minutes when it comes to what are we doing for my son's Christmas.
And you know what? If she doesn't remind you in the next 30 minutes, you'll be reminded in the next 30 days.
Less than that at this point.
Just depends on your billing cycle.
Yeah, there's ways that Nutanix as a technology platform, right, actually sort of really lends itself to a hardware as a service model, right? Like push button, receive new hardware node. Yeah. In so many ways, Ben, you're totally right. Like the ability to, of course, scale in, scale out, right? So get more when I need it, give it back when I don't, is easier to do when you're getting those nodes in like public cloud, right? Because I'm renting them and I can actually give them back in a way that I can't really give them back if they're in my own data center. But also stuff like self-healing, stuff like you hit it as well, technology refresh, right? Like we see it on-prem every day with customers, right? Like, oh, here's your outgoing G5 nodes, here's your incoming G8 nodes. Great, you just expand the cluster, eject the old nodes, and it's the simplest refresh you've ever done. But that applies even more so in the cloud, right? Where you can just hit, this month I'm paying for this generation of node, but next month, if another one comes out, I can just add that new node and roll through my cluster, and I'm on the latest hardware that whatever that cloud provider chooses to stock on the shelves there. I just instantly take availability of it, and it's so simple.
Well, and we're focusing just on the hyper-converged infrastructure layer, but I mean, if you talk about Carbon and the Kubernetes layer, that modern application is built in a very similar way. So if you're talking microservice applications and things like that, they're built to scale up and scale down. And if you have this capability at the infrastructure layer, it's just going to drive that ability to automate and fully end-to-end kind of programmatically, expand and contract your infrastructure. So the story's even more powerful when you start talking about refactoring those traditional 3-tier applications into something modern that can make use of that dynamic expansion of your infrastructure.
Totally.
It's a trip, Philip, because you just kind of segued into section 3 about this, about migrate and modernize. We know that customers want the end result to be refactoring. And we do not necessarily see that as a threat. Where we do see NC2 fitting perfectly in that is when they do this modernization, they need to be close to cloud. And that's what the clusters in cloud does for you. It allows you to move that workload as it is. And then once you get your cloud presence, out there, now you can decouple that to figure out how it will work in native Azure, native AWS, and you don't have this, transport cost of getting it in and out of the environment. So we see a lot of customers doing that as well, as far as let me set up a footprint, let me, replicate my on-prem footprint out to Azure as is, and then let my development team work solely in Azure to decouple that for an Azure as environment, and necessarily use the Nutanix backend to run that Kubernetes environment, just as we do on-prem, in C2 and Azure, and now our Kubernetes offerings.
But you pick on 2 really great things there. And the first is around control. So why would someone want to run their own Kubernetes when you've got AKS sitting out in Azure? Well, it's about control. Do you want Microsoft doing the updates when they want to do the updates, or do you want to be able to control that? We talked to, or Jirah mentioned it, the whole VMware disruptive, or maybe it was Ben, the whole VMware upgrade disrupting your Citrix infrastructure. Well, think about that now applied to modern applications. If something gets deprecated in Kubernetes, now your application that depends on that is stuck in a particular version. So if Microsoft moves you to the new version of Kubernetes, that's not a great thing for your particular application. So it may break you and cause downtime. That's one of the things that you get that control back, even though you're getting public cloud. You get the ability to still be able to version the things that you're running, your workloads, and make those decisions about what's right for your business rather than being at your cloud provider's schedule. And then the other thing, there's a lot of traditional workloads that aren't going to go away. I think that's the reality that you're picking at too, Ben, is we need to bring things closer to those cloud native services, but there's a lot of client server applications. I know we spend a lot of time working with customers on traditional applications. Not all of those vendors are enticed to make it a modern web application or SaaS. So enterprises require those. And we have to be able to support our customers and our businesses to keep the lights on.
I think it's spot on, Phil, right? Like it was early on in the cloud, cloud services meant both consuming cloud economics and consuming as a service, right? So not being able to express a preference around versioning and maintaining the control. More mature cloud services, right, let you get the cloud economics, but maintain that control that really you often need as an enterprise, right? There's things you just aren't allowed to delegate when they are part of the, line of business systems, right? You have to have that kind of control and change processes around them. And then to your point, yeah, I think it's there's a lot of wisdom there, right? So many customers have to do both, right? Run next gen apps, run old school apps alongside. And that's one reason Nutanix really shines is it can do both. So whether you're 10, 90, 80, 20, 20, 80, whatever your blend is of that containerized app and VM based app, like they both run good on Nutanix, and I can solve both those problems with one common stack. And as my blend changes over time, my experience as an admin does not.
Beautiful. So one of the things too, Ben, that you hit on earlier when you were talking about the developers wanting to stay on the same platform, I thought of another way that is mentioned here that, it helps be able to stay on the same platform and just have the exact same infrastructure move from one place to the other. DR, the first one on the list.
Yeah.
Arguably, one of the more important ones, it's something we end up getting to by way of another conversation, right?
Yes.
But like I say, very, very important to be able to do that, be able to not have to go and purchase more infrastructure and house more infrastructure in a different location. Just put it in Azure. It's sitting there and ready and waiting for you at any point. So, if you can't get hardware, or you don't have a location, or you just need something to happen right now, because you might have a hurricane coming or something like that, something that wasn't planned, it just happened. You need to hurry up and get something in place, and this absolutely could be a way for you to accomplish that.
So let me ask a question, because I hear this a good bit from customers. Can you guys talk to me about this Azure spend idea? Is this committed dollars that a company has under a license agreement? I'm a little confused on that. We have a lot of customers that they have a lot of interest in this product. Exactly what you said. This gives them a DR footprint, but part of that DR footprint is reducing this Azure spend. And I need to wrap my head around that. And I hope that our customers are out there going, hey, how can I use this technology to not only create a DR footprint, but potentially help me with some Azure spend or commit or whatever the exact language is there?
Well, so I've actually seen it be the other way around, where they want to increase their Azure spend because ultimately that will decrease what they're paying for the other projects that they have going on in Azure. Like with anything else, the more you use it, the more you consume it, the better the numbers look and feel. So I think we all know if you commit to spending a certain amount or doing a certain amount in usage or in compute with virtual machines, right, your price comes down. But Microsoft also has some other creative things that they do. If you commit to an overall, certain amount of spend, then you can get a certain amount of discount from that too. So very much depends on the customer and the agreement that they have. But Phil, you look like you want to chime in there.
Yeah, because I actually do know of one way to kind of use this. I mean, you've got data services here within Nutanix that you can turn on, dedupe, compression, things like that don't exist in some of the native Azure products. So if you're using something to store into blob storage, you need it to be there when you need it. You don't need to spend 2 weeks rehydrating from slow storage that's cost effective. You need it to be available to you when you need to turn on a DR event. So if your data center goes dark, you need to be able to start spinning up quickly. And NC2 for DR gives you that capability because it's all on good storage, but you're getting these storage efficiencies that don't exist in native cloud platforms. You're not seeing dedupe and things like that in blob storage. And, that's always part of the conversation. Whoever the software provider is that I've talked with in the past how quickly your recovery time is always a variable that you're trying to understand when you're DRing to cloud. So if you're going into native Azure instances, you're going into native blob storage, things like that, you've got to answer, do I put it on the more expensive fast tiers, or do I put it on the lower cost archival tiers where it's going to take me longer to spin up when I have a DR event? And it's kind of this balancing act that customers have to go through with the native cloud services. And in this, you kind of avoid that.
Yeah, agreed. The last one on here, we've kind of hit on a couple of times just around it, is end user computing. And it was mentioned here in the blog that you can flexibly create Citrix desktops as a service environment to suit customer workload needs. I know you can also carry forward, a couple of positive things from that too. You've got the ability there to kind of expand on demand, as you talked about earlier, Ben. You've got the different pieces that you can have out of Nutanix that involve EUC and Citrix around the way that Nutanix approaches it, especially around machine creation services. But I guess, instead of diving a lot into that, or at least, I shouldn't say instead of, do any of you guys want to hit on any of that before we move to the next piece?
Well, the biggest thing here to me is density. In our NC2 environment, we're going to be able to get more users per node than you are natively. And that's a big thing with cost. And I think that's one thing, is if you're using this for end user compute environment, is how many users can I get on those nodes? And I'm pretty sure Nutanix is going to shine when it comes to that density, which is then going to come back to saving money. So that's one reason we see a lot of customers really look at the Citrix partnership, but also the density they can get out of our technology sitting in an NC2 Azure platform.
Yeah.
Well, in control, right? Keeping the customer in control of their sizing and allocations. So like, I'll call back to our past episode about some newer AMD CPUs and how they actually broke our internal desktop density testing method, because their CPUs, the cores were so broad that we actually found a new sweet spot for density from up from 2 vCPUs up to 3 vCPUs per desktop, right? A really weird sounding number because it's not base 2 and we're all nerds, but 3 vCPUs actually let the node. Okay, we're all nerdy. So Harvey, CPUs are these things that do all the thinking for a computer. So 3 vCPUs was a real sweet spot, right? Don't go from 2 to 4. Well, guess what? If your cloud provider, any cloud provider, only offers you 2 or 4 vCPU instances, right? Well, do you want to pay more or do you want to pay less?
Right.
And so keeping you as the user in control of your desktop VM allocation sizes lets you really wring all the value out of that platform.
Yeah, that's a great conversation there too, because you don't have to be beholden to the sizes that were already determined for you, which is huge when it comes to being able to compute in the cloud, giving you that flexibility. Now,
Harvey, while we're on the topic, I mean, we had this come up with a customer of ours out in the field. EUC and DR. How do you have multiple regions and things like that and get your golden masters out? I mean, there's lots of other benefits here that kind of come in with that close integration between Nutanix and Citrix and things like that you get to benefit from here in NC2.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, 100%. That is definitely not the first time we've had that conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of magic, and it's definitely a secret sauce here.
Yeah.
I mean, in one sense, it feels like she's touching on the heading of the next section, right? Like the cool thing about NC2 on Azure is it's different because it's the same, right? So the same way that my gold master image works and my pool cloning works and provisioning all works, I can now take that to the cloud, get cloud economics, get control of my own destiny, get the agility, achieve that checkbox of like, we're all in on the cloud or whatever my mission is. Right. But my experience doesn't have to change.
Phil, I'm glad you scrolled, because I was starting to feel like I was doing a terrible job of focusing us and moving us through. All right, we're going to focus and we're going to get through this. And then we talk about like 6 lines. That's all right. No problem. So I love this phrasing here. In NC2, so Nutanix Cloud Clusters, NC2 on Azure is different because it's the same. I talk a lot about, having the ability to move forward with the things that you know, which in this case would be Prism, right? Or Prism Pro, Nutanix Cloud Manager, I guess is what I should be saying since the naming has changed. But names aside, right? You have skills that you already know. You have things that you already know. You have workflows that you already know. Why not be able to use those things in Azure the same way you do on-prem? I think that is a game changer, and have for a lot of reasons and a lot of time. But Jirah, you want to hit on that one?
Well, and I can think of even better operational benefits around, like, when I go to update my Goldmaster images once a month or once a quarter, please not once a year. Why wouldn't I want to use a solution that can just auto protect them up to my cloud environment, right? Like that's one less thing I can forget to do, or something I no longer need to worry about forgetting to do. That'll just happen automatically. So that gives me room in my brain to think about other things.
Right. Like, how do I get my other workloads to do the same thing?
Sure.
Again, being able to just, you don't have to go and reskill your team. If you have a team, if you got people you're in charge of, you don't have to worry about, spending extra money to train them, right? All of those things disappear when they're using the same tool set that they've been using. And ultimately, I talk a lot about soft cost, right? You can't just measure expenses in terms of how many dollars you're writing a check for. You also have some soft costs behind it, and that would be one of them. Having to take the time to retrain your team, or even worse, having to pay the price for a team that is untrained on the technology you're using in production. I bet nobody's ever run into that.
Well, I mean, the training, is something I focus on a lot, or think about a lot, because for most customers, and it's tough to paint in very broad brushstrokes here, but for most customers, the answer is not everything on-prem or in colo, not everything in the cloud. It's going to be a mix, right? Because data has gravity, and most users don't work in the cloud, right? They work at home, they work in offices, so latency is a thing. So almost everybody has multiple silos of availability, right? Usually on-prem, usually cloud. And if you're hearing this, if you're a customer listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, staffing is easy, training is easy, well, then life's good, right? But if you're like, I need to have a team that does more every single day with less, that needs to learn new skills, well, then this is the easy button for saying that one skill set applies to all those pockets of availability now, right? Cloud, on-prem, colo. Right. And I didn't just double or triple my training burden, hiring burden, retention burden for my human resource, right? That actually makes this whole thing work.
Right. Agreed.
Now, those are also C-level conversations, because as we're sitting here talking, we're talking at an infrastructure level. At the end of the day, C-levels care about applications. How are our applications being used by our customers, our end users, X, Y, and Z? So talking about simplicity and flexibility, whether on-prem, in cloud has flavor. I think Andy says it best, clouds. What flavor do you have? Private cloud, public cloud, something between. This product set can fit into that. I mean, it can go where you need it to go. And I think one thing that's very flexible about Nutanix that kind of differentiates us from some of our competitors is that one license does this. We have single uniform license that will allow you to go in all these places. So to me, when they say NC2 is different but the same to me is the license set you have today and the functionality you have today. Just take that with you to where you want it to go. Today we're talking about Azure, but it could be AWS. It could be some of the private cloud vendors that are out there, Equinix, those guys, So I think that's really, in essence, to me, what that title says is buy your license, you pick where you want it to go, flexibility, simplicity will follow in that model.
Yeah, agreed. And that kind of hits too on what's in the middle of the pictures here, the accelerate cloud adoption. There's no faster way to do something than to use what you already have. I mean, you've got the licensing, you've got the skill set. Microsoft's got the hardware. It's already there. Everything you need is already there. You just need to connect the dots. So definitely accelerating your cloud adoption there. Another way that you can do that completely behind the scenes and not have the rest of your end users worry about it or know about it. They don't care where the infrastructure is hosted. They just care that stuff works. So just work on making it work and having the ability to have it alive and working and available in more than one setting. So definitely, it is different because it's the same. I like that. Let's see. So the next heading here is NC2 availability. Where, what, and when. We kind of talked about that a little bit, but to get into more detail, it's got a listing here of the Microsoft Azure regions, some of them that it is available in. Azure East US, West US 2, North Central US, and support for other global Azure regions being developed. At this point, you've got a few options, right? You got an East Coast option, a West Coast option, a Central option, and they're continuing to build that out in other regions. I guess ultimately the point there is that, again, it's already there and available for you. You've got options where you want to put it. You can put it closer to your users, or if you want it geographically dispersed, then you've got that option as well. If you're on the East, they've got West. If you're on the West, they've got East. If you need to be in the middle, they've got the middle. They've got you all covered however you need to do that. So questions, pieces on that, guys? Anything you want to hit on there? I think that one's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, just trust it'll grow. I mean, like anything else, if you look at our AWS footprint, it's a little bit bigger than this. So we'll follow right into that. And then the other thing that, our nodes right now are not storage heavy, but they're coming. And so those are two things, the footprint will continue to grow, and trust there'll be more nodes with storage heavy in it. So we can look at more of these replication offloads and workloads and stuff like that. So just, keep your eye on the growth of it and know that we're in the business and we're now expanding this service.
Absolutely. Pricing flexibility here. So you've got options here for sure. They've got some laid out, but at a very basic kind of level here, you've got ways that you can do this and set it up so that you're pulling it out of the Azure Marketplace for your Nutanix software. You've got ways to do it, continuing to use the licensing you already have, which Ben spoke to, or if you want to have, both what you have on-prem and have Azure be a new data center for you and have them up simultaneously, then you've got the option to just pull licensing in for that and have everything up, not just, have it set up in one place. So
and you can mix and match, which I think is one of the coolest ones, right?
So very good.
If you're doing e-commerce, right, and the last 6 weeks of the year are really busy, maybe you need 3 or 4 nodes for 10 months out of the year. So go ahead and own your Nutanix licensing for 10 months out of the year, or for by 3 years or 5 years, whatever you want, however you want to buy that license. And those nodes that you can burst onto, right, expand onto on demand, like we talked about, sure, rent those licenses, right, through the marketplace for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 2 months, or whatever you need to, right? So you can mix and match within a cluster to have that. I own these licenses and I buy these on demand only when I need to burst out to them.
Yeah, and I think to Phil's point earlier too, right? Today is Cyber Monday, and really this is the beginning for a lot of those retail type customers. This is the beginning for a very hectic next 2 months for them. But then after that, they don't really need all that capacity anymore. So you've got the flexibility there to be able to pull in what you need when you need it, and then let it go and not pay for it later. So that's That's hugely important for those kinds of customers with seasonal business.
Yep.
Well, in your more traditional businesses, I mean, that plays into the DR conversation, right? So you just need a landing area, kind of a hot in situ cluster that you're replicating into. But when you have your event, well, then pay for your actual full footprint at that point, not
Absolutely.
up front. Wait until whatever happens to your data center happens. I hate to even throw out examples because it just because it's going to be some crazy thing that's little that ultimately gets you not raining fire from the sky taking out your data center. It's going to be like a backhoe, a North American fiber seeking backhoe.
But it's good that you bring it up because man, we go into a lot of places, and that's a subject that is not a lot of customers have really signed, sealed, and delivered yet. And my hope is, as I learn more about my customers, I can kind of hint to them that we have this capability, and they look at it a little more seriously. Because what I hate is when customers go, you go, what is your DR plan? Well, we would just restore from backup, and you go, well, tell me what that looks like, and you really don't hear anything that gives you a comfort level that they have a run book or a plan. And so again, to our customers, help us, help you get to where, you have a solid DR plan and help on some of that Microsoft spend that you've got that's wrapped around this.
And depending on where the customer's coming from, right? This isn't even an equivalency conversation for DR. It's actually like up leveling in some ways, right? Like if you're really doing all the things that you really ought to be doing when you deploy this, your new VMs you deploy can auto get protected, auto replicate to your DR environment. Your DR environment can auto run a DR test for you every Sunday night and email you every Monday morning to say, yep, we're still all good here. Keep on deploying stuff, and you have the confidence you can recover it when it's needed. Yes. So it's not even just the insurance policy of DR. It's the actually I can prove that this is super usable, and it's protection that follows us as we grow the business.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, everything that we've done over the last 15 years has just ratcheted up complexity within our environments. Our environments are incredibly hard to troubleshoot, hard to understand, but we've benefited from great amounts of flexibility, right? This is one of those few opportunities where we can really start to tap into that flexibility to make it a game changer for our business and get true benefits, true sort of independence in a way. I mean, because we are talking about Azure, but I know I listened to a podcast not that long ago about another cloud provider, and so you're giving back some level of choice to your customers. You're meeting them where they are, where they feel comfortable, and I think that also goes to Harvey's point about not having to reskill. Because Azure and AWS, they do things a little differently. And so anytime you introduce those things, you have that learning curve that slows things down.
Absolutely.
It's almost like I was thinking about that earlier, Phil, it's like our rate of change is increasing in the industry. And I was actually thinking about this is totally off the wall. Is there some future where we can picture like a CIO or CTO being almost measured in gold on agility, right? On like decision making that
absolutely
prevents future lock-in, right? And like if X happens, I can react to that. If Y happens, I can scale for this. If this kind of contraction happens, I can scale in for that. And almost rewarding more flexible decision making.
So simplicity and flexibility equals agility.
Yes.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yep.
Look at you. So, I mean, ultimately, right, all of our end users have become increasingly less tolerant of downtime. They're being asked to be able to work from anywhere, right? We have to make sure they can work from anywhere.
Well, in some industries, it's not even like in healthcare, man. It was very rare that you could take the systems down. I mean, the moons had to be aligned, and I didn't work in what I would consider trauma. In some trauma environments, you're not going to be able to take that network down. You've got to have some kind of way of switching over to something secondary or So, and I hear that in finance as well, that they get real picky about things going down. So, downtime is not tolerated at this point in certain industries.
No, not.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue we're getting to the point where it's for all of them. I don't see it, and it's not necessarily because the users are demanding to be able to. I want to work right now. They've just gotten used to, hey, if I want to watch a movie, I just go to Netflix and I start watching the movie. And if that movie doesn't start within 5 seconds, right, that's a bad interaction. And they're taking that standard into the workplace. And so that's kind of what I think we're seeing more and more, and why, to Jirah's point, you absolutely will see those types of positions graded by resiliency and by uptime and availability in ways that just haven't been the norm for those types of positions before.
Yeah, well, think about what Jirah was saying is when you have a CIO that can sit back and go, okay, I've got X cloud provider. Here's what my workload's costing me today, and where do I need to have it where it will be most efficient for the company? That's going to really be the person that's in control. You know, when they've got their cost almost calculated and able to predict, you know, when and where and how. Imagine being able to do testing on things like a storm coming, and now you need to move your load to another part of the country. What's that going to cost the company?
That's exactly it.
And so those are going to Jirah's point with agility, those are things that CIOs are going to want to look at as far as, you know, how am I looking today, but as future risks come up, how's that going to affect my ability, and what could that potentially cost me? And let's not get the cybersecurity insurance into it. They're going to be asking those questions too. They're going to be looking at, you know, what's your agility statements? And so, again, hate to pound it in the ground, but simplicity and flexibility is going to equal that agility.
Well, Ben, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I mean, I know, having gone through a couple cyber renewals, they're asking increasingly more technical questions. So it used to be your underwriters, the folks that you were working with for your policy, they weren't asking IT questions. Now they're getting into the nuts and bolts and trying to understand what their risk profile looks like. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, I have a hate relationship with cyber insurance. So, but yes, no, that's 100% correct. And maybe one day, I hope to never have to use it. Right? You buy it in hopes that you never have to use it. So yes,
is your person that takes care of your technology in today? I would like to speak with them.
Yeah. All right, what else? Phil, get your scroller moving.
I think we got through it, guys, to be real honest. This is just where you go from here, man.
Look at that. We did.
Yes.
So as I always try to ask Jirah and stick him on the spot, and he always just nails it. Jirah, what do we have to do if we want more information?
Man, we're rolling out the buffet. So if you like to read, you can read stuff. If you want to watch, we got videos. If you want to see it, we can spin it up for you. So you got plenty of options. The blog post here links to the white papers. Of course, we're also listed on the Azure web pages as well. Call your friendly Nutanix SE, and they can give you a nifty demo or get you spun up on a trial. There's also incentives around trials right now, which may or may not expire by the time you hear this recording. So check for the latest on that.
But I like how you put the disclaimer out there.
It's almost like recordings stand forever, but maybe free trial offers don't. But and it also links in the blog post here to that the free test drive as well. So
yeah.
If you want it, reach one of us on this blogcast and we'll get it to you, man. It should be real easy for us to get this out. This is a hot topic for the company. We're excited that we got the product, and anybody that wants to use it, you let us know. We'll tear down the walls and get it to you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys. I definitely appreciate the level of conversation here today. I also appreciate that we actually made it. So I can use that as a bragging point to Andy, who's probably already listening to this, that we did it. We made it.
That was a real win. Yeah. Hitting that 2 out of 2 episode mark.
So definitely appreciate you guys as always. And we will see you next time.